Welcome to Newsroom, brought to you by Insurance Brokers Alliance. This, of course, is where we talk about everything that's going on in the country, in the news. Sometimes we even talk about things that are not in the news, or might be in the news. And of course, we're very well equipped to do so tonight with three panel members who are either journos or ex-journos. So there'll be plenty of discussion going on. Welcome back, Malcolm Gayfer. Nice to have you with us.
Thanks, Bill. Good evening.
And Hunter Andrews.
It's great to be here, Bill. Thanks.
And you, of course, will recognise Ronald. Nice to have you back here, Ross.
Well, I've never been a journo, but I'll take that as a win.
You were on radio at one stage then. You were doing something there.
I just had a big mouth.
Oh, I see.
For his morning tea.
I just naturally assume anybody who's like you hear on a radio station is doing some sort of journalism. Well, there's lots of stuff in the news.
Oh, that's a wild assumption.
Well, these days it especially is. Mind you, the choice of radio stations, Malcolm, just to get off the topic of it, has increased vastly, hasn't it, over the years?
Well, yeah, over the years it has, yes.
Yeah.
Of course, a lot of them have changed brands, changed colours, changed flags, changed letterhead, but, perhaps the same old station.
It seems like they multiply though, Ross. Like when you first started in radio years ago, how many were in Invercargill?
One, and that was who Mel was working for.
Yeah, both of the same one.
One plus another.
Well, there was one radio in Invercargill.
Yeah, there were two radios
Two
and one
TVs.
radio station, but advertisers found it difficult because all of a sudden they had to choose between two. Well, you've got, 28 frequencies in town
Or something
now,
like that,
so-
yeah.
Pretty amazing, actually.
Yeah.
So broadcasting's a big thing. And we're broadcasting to your living room via the modern medium of television. I'm very happy to do so, I might say. Now, big item in the news today, Ross. Lila Hare's been appointed as leader. Oh, no, hasn't she?
Not officially.
My apologies.
Understands. The
I
New Zealand
understand.
Herald understands.
Yeah.
I'll rephrase that.
That means they can write anything, but
Yeah.
they've got understand.
Right.
Just insert name here.
It says here, quoting the New Zealand Herald, I must say, former Alliance Party MP Lila Hare will be announced as leader of .com's internet party tomorrow. The Herald understands, so I think we could probably understand the same thing. If this does happen, suddenly it almost seems the scene changes, doesn't it?
Well, doesn't it? I think it's blown out of the water some of the other conspiracy theories as to who might be there. Nandor Tenchos was being talked about.
Right.
Obviously not. I heard Willie Jackson on the way in here tonight, actually, was being touted as possibly putting his hand up to run for that party. And he's saying, I didn't say that at all.
Right.
It was in the Herald.
Yeah. Oh, well, it must be true.
No, I'll take that part back. No, it is an interesting change on the landscape. And oddly enough, I heard Sir Bob Jones on another community TV station up the line a few weeks ago. This is a bit of a side topic, but basically said, a Labour coalition could get the numbers to govern at the election. And I thought, whoa, this is a bit of a wild statement.
From Bob Jones?
Coming from Sir Bob Jones.
Okay.
I thought, well, he knows his numbers and knows the score. And of course, this might add a bit of credence to it.
Yeah.
Who these people are going to align with, or who wants to align with them, remains to be seen. But John Keys, I think, said at the weekend it's going to be a very tight race.
Yeah, well, I think the stacking together of those minor parties certainly could have a couple of weeks ago tipped the scales. All of a sudden, we end up with people governing us who the majority haven't voted for, and I just can't get my head around that being a great thing. And .com has highlighted that. I think he's been quite manipulative of New Zealand's MMP system, all for his own gain to stop him being extradited. And so we've got a collection now of the left who have rolled over for .com at the first sniff of cash.
So, Ross, 21 years ago, did you vote for MMP?
And, no, I didn't. No, I voted for first past the post. Yeah.
Well, I mean, we get what we deserve, really, don't we? That's MMP.
Well, I don't deserve it.
I just think...
Your part, well, Australia. You go to Australia.
Oh, thanks for the offer.
I just think looking at this, and I think Ross raised the term, rolled over.com. I think the left have rolled over.com, or will, in this case in point. Kim.com, I think he'll be pushed right to the sidelines, and the left will lead. And Hone Harawira, quite a shrewd operator, and same with Lila Hare.
There's no question about it. I mean, you're looking at Lila Hare, if she is elected, a very experienced
We
politician.
understand.
That's right, if she is.
It is reported.
It is reported. But I mean, a very, very experienced...
They're all shrewd operators.
A very experienced politician. No one's ever been able to accuse Lila of doing anything underhand or anything like that. Highly intelligent woman, got a couple of university degrees, got a law degree. And, when she was part of the Alliance Party, was instrumental in introducing quite a lot of important legislation to Parliament. I mean, I think the 12 weeks paid parental leave and all sorts of things like that. I mean, she was an active Alliance MP. She just wasn't one of those ones who just went and sat there. So I would say that this knowledge, once it's announced, will set...
2 o'clock tomorrow.
2 o'clock tomorrow, yeah. And there'll be some big reaction to it.
Well, following on in the article in the Herald, Martin Bradbury,
yes.
Bomber Bradbury,
Bomber
used to be known as, quoted as saying, "So if this works the way we hope it will, Hone Harawira, Laila Hari, Annette Sykes and John Minto will be in Parliament."
Well,
that'll make an interesting combination.
and the upside of that is that Bradbury won't be there with his hate blog, and he was being touted for the last few days as a possible contender for that top job. So while it would have been fun to watch, I'm happy that it hasn't quite gone down that path. Hari's been with the Greens for the last 18 months as an issues manager, which I find interesting.
Right, okay, yeah.
They're going to hate that she's jumped the fence.
In fact, Hunter, do you see that this is going to mean that the Greens will get less votes? Because are people going to move? I mean, clearly national voters aren't going to jump the fence and start voting Mana or Internet Party, but is it just going to bleed out from the other left-wing parties?
I think a lot of younger people will vote because of the internet connection.
Maybe ones who will
vote
vote now who hadn't voted before.
Motivate the young voters. Yeah, definitely.
I don't know if it's going to be a winner for New Zealand Inc. as a whole. We're seeing the ultra fast broadband rolled out now. It's going past people's gates. How many of us have hooked up? Is that it might be attractive to the younger voter because they perceive Kim.com for some bizarre reason as being cool? Well, that's not the way to cast a vote, but let's put it up to 30. Let's put the age up to 30 when you've grown a brain. But it'll be interesting to watch, all right. Something I read today, the agreement that Mana and the Internet Party have only runs for 6 weeks after the election.
Okay.
So that'll be interesting after that time comes up. Will it be a case of split and see you later? We've got where we want to be.
Do we understand what this agreement actually is? This is obviously for the what's-the-name seats, the list seats, is it? They've agreed to cooperate for the list seats.
Oh, that press statement hasn't come out yet.
Oh, okay, right. That one's going to come out. Yeah.
That'll be tomorrow's.
So it seems to be some sort of tenuous amalgamation there. So, it's
they would go for list seats, wouldn't they?
The one I'll be very interested to see in Parliament is John Minto, to be quite honest. Now, whether you like John Minto or not, whether you agree with him or not, he's a man of principle and sticks to his principles and doesn't move.
Well, he used to be. What's he doing hanging around with Kim.com?
Well, I don't know if he really is.
Money, Bill.
You think it might be?
Absolutely.
I guess you get to the age where you can see an opportunity to forward your agenda or your party's agenda, and they've jumped at it, haven't they?
Or bulk up your bank account.
And let's remember that they've got to lift the vote to 1.2% and win Hone Harawira's seat before they actually get another MP in Parliament. They're at 0.8 now.
Yep.
So, we're not necessarily talking 3 or 4 yet.
At the end of the day, whilst they manipulate the system, they're doing no more than the National Party's done in Epsom, where everybody was effectively given 2 votes, because they got John Banks in as a national supporter, plus then their list votes then counted. So they got another list MP in there as well, so they got 2. Like down here, if we all voted national, and we all voted Eric in, then Eric, by going into Parliament, would have pushed another list MP out, and that didn't happen in Epsom, so they've done it. So you can hardly blame them for doing it that way.
Well, no, and you could hardly blame the National Party for doing it that way either. MMP just leaves itself wide open to abuse, and I don't understand why we persist.
And who abuses it?
The politicians.
The politicians abuse it. And why haven't the politicians changed it? Because they want to abuse it, and in my view, and both sides of the House we're talking about have done this. I mean, it's happened from when Labor was in power. I mean, there were seats where they said, well, we won't stand a candidate. I'm trying to think who one of them was actually.
Jim Anderton.
Well, Jim
they
Anderton
didn't stand in, was it Sydenham then?
Wigram,
yeah. They didn't stand a candidate there. At least they were open about it.
Yeah.
There wasn't a candidate that you were asking supporters of that candidate not to vote for him or her.
I actually think he would have got in even if Labor had put up a candidate. That's my feeling. Yeah.
And it probably would have looked bad that Labor had come in probably second.
And Mr. Name gone completely out of my head.
What does he do for a job, Bill?
He's a politician.
Okay.
And is he an East Coast base? He's
Don
got a lot of
Craig.
He's got a lot of hair. He's got a
Oh,
lot of,
Nandor.
no.
Oh, Peter Dunn.
Peter Dunn. Thank you so much.
He's
At least we can. I was going to get into the description there, Sherrod.
O'Harrier Belmont, or whatever it was,
Yeah.
is now.
Oh, right. Okay, so Harry Belmont.
Wellington,
Yep.
yes.
Thank you. Good. Right, I'm completely wrong about that. But anyway, I'm wondering
And
if the same.
Colin Craig too.
Colin
Let's
Craig,
see
yeah.
what's going to happen there with the new seat in Auckland or Pakuranga. You know,
Yeah.
Morris Williamson's seat. There'll be a lot of profile there for him to stand.
I'm interested that Sue Bradford has, she's actually protested to the point where she's just quit.
Yep.
She said, I won't have a part of it. And, that's what she's decided to do. She's clearly against it. But so you've got two people from, seemingly, it seems like a person from the ex-Alliance candidate will be appointed as the leader, and another one who's basically, well, she's ex-Green actually, isn't she, is saying, no, I'm not going to have a bit of it. So
Well, she's ex-Labor, she's ex-Alliance, and she's ex-Green. So
She's quit for how long?
Okay, good point. Good point, Malcolm.
Yeah,
Thank you.
I think the Mana supporters up to now are going to be gutted by this, much as Bradford has been. I just can't see how you can paint it anything apart from Hone selling out for cash. You know, there's 500,000 pieces of silver have gone on the table to form this alliance.
Oh, is that right?
Yeah.
Oh, okay, yeah.
Yeah, I think it's a resurgence of the left over and above everything else. Another way for the left wing to come back into Parliament.
Well, yeah, I guess.
The
But,
far left.
Have a look at what's happened in Britain in the last week with the voting, where overwhelmingly, and in fact right through Europe, voters towards these EU elections have said no to the left after years and years and years of nanny state getting stronger and stronger. And what a turnaround it was last week for those for the centre right and the right, especially on mainland Europe, the right wing parties. They've rocketed in, and it's got to be a worry in some of those
Isn't it the
countries.
case, though?
But it's people saying we've had enough. We've had enough of the austerity
Yeah.
and the fact that they've been pushed into the situation that they're in.
Yeah, well, where did the problems come from though? Banks and right-wing policies that deregulated banking systems, allowed property markets to boom and bust, and then governments had to bail them all out. I mean, that's,
Well,
you know,
I
it's
heard the
interesting
statement
to where
yesterday.
people are just reacting and wanting to change faces. I think.
And they do react to it. Like I heard the statement the other day made by a prominent person who said basically what happened in America was, in the banking situation, private profiteering but social cost.
Yeah.
Because they, as they pointed out, that the compensation that the chief executives or the executives of the banks received during that crash was greater than it had ever been. They took bigger bonuses than they'd ever taken, and the government, at the expense of the working people who lost their houses, bailed the banks out. And so they're going again, everything's up and running, but the loss is still there amongst your middle class and lower class people, whereas the others walked away with massive paychecks. And when it seemed like that, I guess you can understand why the reaction is there, why people feel the way they do about it, and we'll say, and go and camp in Times Square and say, we want some action. And so we seem to get in that situation, don't we, where we go one way and then swing back again.
Well, speaking of your 1%ers, now you've got your 1%ers supporting one of the most crooked capitalists that we've ever had here. Back to the .com story. So the worm turns, eh?
It's interesting. And the reaction that we get, and like we've seen it in New Zealand before, we say, it's just said nanny state.
Yeah, sorry, I should have said the 99%.
Oh, 99%. Okay, right. Yeah, the nanny state, and we get a bit sick of it. We think we'll have something else. If a government could actually say, if we can get some balance in here so that people don't get sick of us and we don't get thrown out, they could be there forever.
Haven't we got that?
Now, Hunter, we were just chatting before the show about what's going on with the New Zealand First Party. Do they seem to be in danger at the moment, do you think? I mean, sort of just a normal
they're always in
attack
danger.
on
Once
Winston?
Winston Peters steps off the stage,
Yeah.
that's the end of New Zealand First. I mean, name a New Zealand First MP.
Yeah, right.
And they were so meek when they left Parliament the other day when Winston wasn't there. In fact, yesterday, no one could get a comment out of them. Everyone's too frightened to say anything.
Last week they even voted the wrong way on...
That's right.
Did they?
On the... how do we term it?
What was the legislation?
So, Cunliffe's after the budget.
Oh, yes,
after
yep,
the budget
okay,
debate.
right.
Yeah, so it was a vote of no confidence, and these numpties, the Greens and New Zealand First, voted the wrong way. The Greens realised
against it.
Yeah.
Against the no confidence.
Oh, they're so used to saying no. The Greens realised their mistake and went back and fixed it up, and New Zealand First had another drink, and then they went and fixed it up. They had to ask the Speaker for leave to be able to fix it.
Did it
half an
cause
hour
hilarity
after
in
the event.
Parliament?
It caused a lot of silence from the National Party.
Oh no.
They held their breath.
Well, it'd be interesting to see what Brendan Horan's going to come out
Yes,
with. And this
that's
is
what
his
I think.
crusade, because he realises he's only got another three something months in Parliament, really. He's never going to win a constituency.
So he's got nothing to lose.
Well, he's got nothing to lose, so he's going after the bloke that put him on the back bench or expelled him from the party and destroyed his chance at a
And at the
political career.
end of the day, it was found that he had nothing to answer for.
Well,
Was
yes.
that correct?
I mean, there was obviously a bit of, I don't know. I mean, this is
Okay,
probably
right.
possibly litigious, but it sounds like it wasn't a good look.
No, it wasn't
what
a
he
good
was
look
up
at
to.
all.
Oh, okay.
But I think that he's about to reveal, and I know that he's receiving information from former parties. So what you've got when you've got a party that's 21 years old, like New Zealand
Right.
First, is a huge amount of disillusioned or former party workers in the background that had promises made to them, or former MPs that are now going to stick their hand up and go, well, actually, Brendan, now that we've got a voice in Parliament, we're going to come forward with this information, perhaps disclosing that Winston Peters or the New Zealand First Party have misused that leader's budget and misused parliamentary staff to actually be campaigning. Like,
Out of his
I was
office.
reading that they would rather charge New Zealand First members $3 a month direct credit out of their account rather than send them a note saying, by the way, your subs are due, by just saying, well, people just don't think about $3 a month, and to actually go through the bother of unsubscribing may be too big a hassle and it just under the radar. So all this sort of manoeuvring that's gone on in the background, I'm not saying that's necessarily wrong, because I'm paying for a website I bought 4 years ago, a name that just pops out of my account every 6 months. Like, I must deal with that, and I don't deal with it. So things like that happen, and it will be interesting to see in the lead up to the election. And I have to say, Winston Peters is a really belligerent guy, and I've met him a few times, and I last interviewed him probably in 1999. That's how long that I was out of the newsroom, really.
Right.
Well, but I interviewed him a couple of weeks ago, and I was frightened of the man.
Right.
I have to say that the apprehension was that you're always on the back foot with him, and you feel that you're, and maybe journalists should feel this, but you always feel you're not only thinking about his answer and whether he's delivering the answer to the question you put to him, but as an interviewer you're also thinking about the question you're going to put to him again. But he adds that other element where you think, when he turns around and goes, where the hell did you get that information from? That's a stupid question. So you're constantly on the back foot, and it distracts you. And I have to say that Guy on Esplanade next morning on the radio, national radio, was receiving the same sort of treatment.
Didn't he get savaged?
So I thought, well,
didn't let go,
I don't
though. He
feel
didn't
so
let go.
bad, and on that Friday, I got the chance to interview the Prime Minister, and it's a completely different scene. It's a completely different feel. He walks straight up to you, and his delivery is
Very
fantastic. But Winston Peters, he is just that belligerent figure. I don't know how people, honestly.
Is he worse than Rob Muldoon?
Well, I don't know. I never interviewed Rob Muldoon.
Because he was a wee bit like
But
that.
he
wasn't
was
Oh, yeah,
definitely
yeah.
like that, and Winston Peters has obviously moulded himself on that combative sort of technique that Muldoon employed.
As far as New Zealand First using our money, taxpayers' money, to campaign out of their offices, they're not the only ones. You see Gareth Hughes at the weekend travelled on taxpayers' expense to a Star Trek convention to campaign for the Greens. He set up there, so it's loose as hell,
Well,
isn't it?
maybe-
How this
maybe
money's being
this-
spent.
maybe
It's
this-
our money.
Yeah, well, maybe it's an election issue that we should, maybe politicians can stand up and go, well, if we are represented as the government of New Zealand, we will look at this. I mean, maybe it's time that we do look at where
What,
those
funding
resources are
parties?
going. That's right.
No way. Why should I be
No,
funded
no,
to
look at
support
where
some?
the money's going.
Oh,
Look
well,
at what's being
absolutely.
done
I
with the
agree
money.
wholeheartedly, Hunter.
Well, there's a lot
But
to be
funding them,
said
no.
for the donations. I mean, maybe that has to be looked at too. I know what you're saying, that should the taxpayers be funding campaigns for political
Well,
parties?
look,
but
if we're sent out on the street, mate, to go and fundraise and you make more than me, it's because you did a better job and you've got more friends with more money.
well, that's true. But also, I may have friends that want certain things done that have a lot more money.
That's where the problem lies, isn't it? On that happy thought, we're going to take a break. Stay with us. We'll be back. Welcome back to Newsroom. Well, a few problems in the paper with the Southland Sharks. Things have not been going well. 3 players allegedly seem to have been involved in something which has caused the police to become very interested in what's going on.
A fracas.
What's that? A fracas?
Oh, yes.
Now, we're not unused to this with sports players, Malcolm. It comes up from time to time.
It does.
But, you know, I was, and they're young fellas, and, you know, I guess they, well, anyway, there's a whole lot of reasons. But the impression that I got from the reporting of this, that was somehow the whole team was involved. But when it boils down to it, at the end of the day, it
Or
seemed,
end of the night.
or the end of the night, most of the team were home in bed. Is this responsible reporting?
Well, what's the old saying about letting the facts get in the way of a good story? You know, I don't know what went on, and I read, like you, the reports that came out at the end of the weekend, and I was horrified. And, you know, I don't know any of the Sharks personnel or their management, but you just know that they'd be gutted.
Yeah.
You know, that's the last thing, you know, any sort of sports team wants. And okay, a bit more of the detail has been clarified now, and it seems that only 3 people were involved, but it still sounds like a nasty, ugly incident, which again they don't want, and again they'll be devastated, gutted by, and to have them, you know, up in court before the judge is just not a good look, you know.
No.
And you know, it comes back to they would be bound by some sort of team charter, team protocol, and it looks like on this occasion it's gone right out the window and over to the other side of the road. And I think there'll be some stern words had at some sort of team meeting.
I'd say they'd have to be bound by some sort of individual employment agreement, wouldn't they? With
Well,
it,
yes,
no
yes.
doubt got disgraceful
And
conduct in it.
once you start getting in court and you're employed by an organisation, goes up to a whole new level, and it's not just a bop on the nose assault charge, it's an assault with intent to injure, I think, which is 1 or 2 steps above. And yeah, I think some advice maybe on both parties by a good legal representative wouldn't go amiss here. Yeah, there would be legal aspects further on from just a charge.
I think it's untidy. I'm kind of glad that the call that these guys should be role models hasn't gone out, because
They missed that one.
Well, yes, and why should we expect them to be?
Tough
But
on.
this sort of behaviour, it doesn't look. It's a great brand. It's been built up, and they're going
that's the
well,
other thing, isn't
and
it?
it's
The
been
zero
really.
fee Southland Sharks.
That's right.
Very tough on the coach, Hunter.
Yes, it
Yeah,
is.
well, I mean, after all his effort.
Yeah, I spoke to Paul Hanare today, and in fact the interview was in Sport tonight, and he was shell-shocked. He's shell-shocked. He just said, you can't imagine what we've been going through. And I said to him, look, I've sort of had a look at the stats for the game, and they came from, I think, 30 down against the side, and was it the Taranaki Mountaineers? An amazing performance, but completely overshadowed by these events. And he said he hadn't even had a chance to look at the matches. You know, it's just been all-consuming. And he said he's never, in all his years at that level in professional sport, he's never encountered a scenario like this. And also to have it compelled by the fact that Gareth Dawson has also been found to have had a banned substance in his system, which was also reported that that the team doctor had, or alluded to the fact that the team doctor had prescribed it to him, when in actual fact it was his own doctor that had prescribed it. But you know, to have all these things come out at once, and of course we had the guys that had done the runner on the taxi, and it's just, you know,
Season
it's
from
a
hell,
huge,
isn't it?
it's just, and they're the champions. So every team, plus the pressure of every team coming here, they've won 5 in a row, by the way.
Right.
I mean, the basketball is still an aspect, but every side is coming here to beat them. They're the champions, so they've got that pressure as well. And when I interviewed them after the last home game here against the Pistons, which they won in the last second, it was amazing. And basketball has missed me for my whole life until the last couple of years. And I've discovered this amazing sport that really suits Southland, because it's inside, and you know, and it draws a brilliant crowd, and they love it. You know, and talking to them after the game. Saying it's more, you know, Kevin Braswell saying it's more than a team. You know, we're mates, we're a family. You know, and you can see how the season has progressed and they've just got better and better. And now this calamity, really. And so talking to Paul Inare about what he's going to do, the man, he hasn't played for years. He may he wouldn't rule it out.
Right.
And so they're calling Dan Peck back, who's retired because he's busy with work and he's just had a child. All the reserves are coming in, and it will be really interesting, that game on Sunday. I'm really looking forward to it. And nothing can condone the activity that's gone on in the weekend. Nothing. Those guys will be out for the season. And they've been remanded, I understand, until late in June.
I think.
But you know, and I wasn't sure how to approach him about it, because it was my first experience dealing with a situation like that, really.
Relatively young, those fellas who've
Yeah,
been
they are.
charged.
Well, they're young men. They're young men.
I wonder if in a situation like that, after, you know, whether there needs to be, in a team situation, where there needs to be a very strong discipline, which is you go nowhere, you go back to the place, you know, where we stay, and you stay there. And I'm sorry, there's no flexibility. You almost wonder if that's got to be like that.
Well, maybe that's an option. And other teams have done that, or they've got chaperones out with them. But I mean, sorry to interrupt.
No, that's right.
Brian Conklin, who's the import, a great player, Brian Conklin, he was in bed at 8:30 that night.
Right.
You know, he was buggered.
Yeah.
You know, he needed to sleep.
Yeah.
And so the paper reports that the whole team is involved in this, so his agents in the States.
Yeah.
Let's not forget, this guy is looking for work with other teams.
Yeah.
You know,
On the
this is
international
not
stage.
Yeah, that's right. The Southland
It-
Sharks
it'll
are not
reflect on
his
him.
only side.
Yeah,
That's
yeah.
right. So they're ringing, going, "Hey, what's the story?
We're hearing
You
about.
know, this is
Yeah.
what we're reading in the media." And so, I mean, that's...
That kind of thing does not go down well in the States.
And Brian Conklin would be one of the nicest guys you could meet.
Yeah.
One thing that disturbs me, and again, I don't know if the reporting is correct, but I did read somewhere that apparently the host team was saying, or someone was saying, that the food for the after-match function was going to be late.
Yeah, it was, yeah.
Oh,
Well,
God.
that's poor.
It was going to be late, and no one, and they said that the paper sort of said, or a paper said they'd snubbed the after-match function, and in reality the side were very hungry, there was going to be a wait, and so they opted not to take the food.
Right.
Right, so
And-
there's your snub.
And yeah, well, that's right. Well, really, it was just illogical. They had to be on the plane early in the morning, and obviously a lot of them wanted to get to bed.
Yep.
And, well, what makes this game more interesting on Sunday is that it's the Mountaineers again.
Oh,
So,
Same
you know,
side.
yeah, it's the same side.
Yeah.
So it's going to be an interesting match.
From a basketball point of view, we want them to hammer them by more.
I tell you what, I love the game, and I
Yeah.
mean, I was worried when I first started reporting on it that I'd look like a complete idiot, and now, well, I always look like a complete idiot.
you look like a
But, you
complete
know,
expert.
But now, I've learned to love the sport, and I'm sitting there with my phone looking at the stats as it's playing out live. It's a great game, and let's hope that the Sharks recover from it, and show.
They will.
I
It's only
think
gonna-
it's that determination to go, this is not the end of us.
Yeah,
This is
yeah.
not what this is all about. These guys have made an enormous error of judgment. Let's push ahead and show New Zealand public or Southland public that we aren't to be written off.
Right.
So the home crowd really needs to turn up on Sunday.
Well,
That's
that will
right.
be the big test, won't
Be
it?
there.
Will,
be there.
will 2,000 people arrive as they have been for all the last time?
Oh, I
They
think
will.
so.
No, they'll be there.
We've
Might be,
lost
there might be
cricket.
even more actually now, because as you said, it's going to be even more exciting. Talking of big mistakes, it seems like TV3 made one in the John Banks trial.
Oh dear, oh dear.
I don't know how that got to air. Honestly, there are very stringent requirements for covering court cases.
Well, in this case, it was people quite high up in the food chain made the decision or cleared it
They
to go
approved
to
it.
air.
Yeah.
Well, I know how it got to here. They made a determined effort to make Banks look like more of an idiot than he's made himself look, and they totally deserve being kicked out.
Yeah.
And Justice Wiley said, "Up with this, I will not put."
Yeah.
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 And,
it's good to see a judge actually put his foot down and enforce the rules.
Yes.
well, look,
That's what they're there for, isn't it?
TV journalism, and I don't include you in this, Hunter.
course not,
I mean that. But some of the more mainstream is just becoming a sideshow, isn't it? This doorstepping with a camera crew at somebody's front door, and he looks shocked and stunned and a little bit guilty. Well, who wouldn't? And it's turned into a cross between, I don't know, the telethon and. John Campbell's ratings have gone down 50% in the last 12 months. He's got half as many viewers this year
Why?
than he has last
What's
year.
caused this?
Because it's turned into rubbish. It's just his agenda being pushed, and it's getting in the road of journalism. There's an agenda there, you know, and they think that we can't spot this, and they serve it up as news.
Okay.
So,
It's interesting
tough luck
you say
TV3.
that, because he's got a big crusade at the moment to get the All Blacks to play in Samoa. And I was listening to sport radio, as I tend sometimes to do.
Oh, so you
and there was a caller, first-time caller, long-time listener, saying, "Look, why this
Looking for
guy?
Murray
So
Deaker.
this guy's got a profile, and he's going to push that agenda, and it's all very well, but we've been calling him for it for years. You know that." You know, what does Irish rugby do for us, really, that Samoan couldn't deliver? Well, money, actually, money at the end of the day. But
When you see how many of our top rugby players are ethnic Samoans, you know, there's a reason itself, I suppose.
how annoyed would we be if Australia kept sucking, well, probably with Rugby League we could have said that before the Warriors, but kept sucking all our resources out in rugby or anything, we wouldn't take it well, I would think.
Getting back to Campbell.
Yeah, come back to Campbell.
I've been not an avid follower, but I do enjoy his program ahead of the program on the other channel. And certainly over the last couple of years, he's made a real effort, or the program's made a real effort to highlight the seemingly slack goings on in the recovery in Christchurch.
Yes.
That may, for some people, gone to a point of, oh God, we've had enough of this. You know, these Christchurch people bleating. But they came back again with the floods, and they really hammered it. And, you know, I think without that publicity, some of the action that has been taken wouldn't have happened. I mean, it was Campbell's program that got one of the, I was going to say survivor of the Christchurch floods, but that's not quite right. The woman whose place has been just devastated by flood waters, and they just marched into a John Key press conference, and, you know, she just asked some questions, you know, when will this be done? When will that be done? And John Key, admittedly, calmly answered it, and did put him on the spot, but he handled it. I don't think other programs would have bothered. And I think due to that, you know, things in that aspect, it's been starting to move.
Yeah, but and I think you're right. But should journalism be cause-driven? I mean, you know, we're hearing about plain packaging for tobacco now. It'll be fizz is next in the gun. It'll be alcohol after that. The mainstream TV networks will drive that and repeat the press releases that get sent out as they do now, without question.
We're looking at an interesting change in, you know, what used to be hardcore current events or news. That's sort of gone out the window. I read today that 2020, that's people going to be gone. Just going to be screening the American stuff, and then when the contract runs out, they'll just fade to black. It's on TV2, and who the hell watches current affairs on TV2?
TV2?
Well, TV2, am I right?
Is
there? Well, I
Pacific
don't know.
Television.
But, you know, there is a change. Hardcore current events or current affairs is just a non-starter these days. So you've got to rely on topics like, you know, the Christchurch floods or something like that people can relate to. Otherwise, you know, hardcore interviews with politicians and the governor general, that's nobody watches that.
Are we seeing a decline in investigative journalism?
Yes.
Absolutely.
Yep.
See, it's happened.
I think that we've got a big choice now. If you look at the documentaries being made and available, feature-length documentaries are enormous now. With the decrease in the price of digital technology for cameras, we've got people going out, not working for mainstream media, going out and making award-winning documentaries on issues that are key to them. I think that you've got to look a bit deeper than
Are you talking New Zealand or internationally?
Well, internationally.
Oh, yes.
And you can pick and choose what you want to watch.
And you're right, Hunter, but then you have movies like Crude, which has been held up as this expose on the terrible happenings with getting oil out of Nigeria and the big business interests. And it's been exposed that the movie was funded and made by the lawyer acting against Exxon. So, you know, they did their research at 50 miles an hour from the back of a limousine driving past these places. It's pitched as fact. It was a great film. Everybody was outraged, and that's exactly what he wanted, and he's been caught out. But we never hear about that.
Oh, yeah, and that's becoming more and more the case. And I was talking about it to somebody late last year about something or other, but he just came back to me and said, yeah, but who investigated it? Who wrote it? In other words, who was behind it? And that's what we've got to look at. There's no such thing as impartial anymore.
Yes.
who was behind
Well,
it.
when was there impartial, really, though?
I mean, it goes back
Well,
to some of your
days of
days.
old.
There was.
Yeah, well,
Journalists were, they
When
put it on
broadcasting
themselves.
was state-owned and run? Or
Yeah, well,
That
yes,
would be one
back
time.
then, and you wouldn't find a journalist that wanted work in journalism that would have been a member of a political party, because they self-governed back then, they believed,
well,
and they're a little more straight than they are now.
Newspapers in New Zealand were either left or right, though, into the 70s, 60s and 70s. There were definite leanings in newspapers, certainly.
That would be true.
Certain people
They
read
were
certain
regarded
papers.
that way. Yep, they were regarded that way.
Oh, yes,
I don't
think a lot of people now associate with certain journalists with one side or the other.
Yeah.
I mean, Fran O'Sullivan in the Herald, she's
John Armstrong,
Brian Rudman, they've got their leanings, you can say.
whale oil.
As long as,
But it does add
He's a
interest,
journalist.
as
doesn't
long
it?
as
It
we
does add
can see
interest.
that, as long as
Yeah.
you can see that, you know.
Yeah, well, look, take whale oil as an example, or Kiwi blog, or the Standard, or Bradbury's Hate blog. You know exactly where they stand.
Oh, yeah,
They're more honest than the TV
But
reporting a lot of the
blogs
time.
are blogs, and they're not journalism in the traditional sense, like working for the Herald or
Mel,
the
where
Dominion.
do you go to see the story that the mainstream media will carry in a week or 2 weeks? You see it first on blogs, any of the major
Oh
stuff.
yeah. Yeah, well, that's where
Yeah,
some of the recent stories have come from, isn't
So
it?
we're seeing a movement, really, aren't we? That, I mean, if we're looking to see this major investigative journalism being done by television, it obviously isn't paying. You said that that Campbell's ratings have gone down by 50%, and as you said, Hunter, we're going to see this drift. It will still be done, because there'll still be people around who will want to investigate, won't there? I mean, it's inherent in the
do
human
it whatever
nature.
way they possibly can.
Yeah, they'll still be there, but now people who perhaps never had the resources of a television channel behind them to make the media can now do it practically from
that's
home.
Right, and it was a huge thing. There was a limited amount of resources available. We had 2 channels here up until 1989, and then along came 3, and we had limited choices. And all those resources, who could own a television station then? Who could own not digital cameras, or even the price of a decent broadcast quality camera? And then where would you broadcast it? So we had these sort of fringe reporters that had causes that they were writing books. That was the option. Now we've got people instantly access to the world through digital technology. And I think it's a good thing. I know we've got to deal with it, and you've got to dismiss what you don't want. But I think that's far more preferable than a 2020 type show that goes, well, tonight we've got the amazing story of a woman who had the first face transplant, and then we've got blah blah the dog that saved.
They choose for you.
Yeah, that's right.
They
You had a
choose for you.
choice for
Yeah,
that
you have to
hour of
admit-
television. You got those stories, and if you're interested in other areas, then
Well, you can't knock the cat saving the kid from the dog story, though, can you?
Oh, that was great.
there you go. And it was caught on someone with a handheld digital device. Didn't have to wait half an hour for a camera operator to be dispatched from a centralised.
YouTube in 2
Yep,
minutes.
it was out there, and we were all
It was interesting
enjoying it.
enough, a story that got overshadowed by events of yesterday, but the train that overshot the runway at the Melling Station in Lower Hutt.
Well, hardly
Yeah.
mentioned.
but that
There
could have
was
been
mentioned,
huge,
but it
eh?
could
Yeah,
have.
exactly.
I heard on the 8:30 news, there's no further train services on the Melling line due to a technical malfunction. Then on Morning Report, they had somebody there from the radio station, well, we've got so-and-so on the platform now, what's happened? Well, the train's bashed into the concrete buffer.
And an interesting aspect of that was all yesterday after that accident, it was being pitched as a Chinese-made train. Well, it wasn't. It
wasn't, was it?
Korean.
Well, it's not far away.
And it may end
Malcolm.
up, it's got absolutely, it probably may end up, it's got absolutely nothing to do with the cause of the accident whatsoever.
Another one had done similar things, but I love the civilian website. And the one story he had up, and the guy's name escapes me, but he is brilliant, but saying that rail officials consider moving large barrier at end of track.
On that happy note, we're going to take another break. Stay with us. We'll be back with more chat and topics of interest very shortly. Welcome back to Newsroom. China is complaining that the US is spying unscrupulously. Now, I don't know, the heading says, again from the Herald, China calls on US to stop unscrupulous spying. So does this mean we've got scrupulous spying, Ross, and unscrupulous spying?
Well, it does, and when it comes to unscrupulous, the Chinese ought to know. Because didn't we have the NIWA supercomputer hacked last week, and that was traced back to Chinese IP addresses to the military. Chinese military have been hacking for years, and hacking's one of those terms, you know, they've been sneaking in and stealing.
Yeah.
So, of course, everybody has. And so what's the solution? The EU would like to restrict people's Google searches. They think that that will help with cybercrime and that sort of thing. But I'm jumping topic a little bit, aren't I?
Well, it's all in the same vein, really.
Well, yeah, it is.
And yeah, well, as the Chinese thing, I mean, I think it might be because that the US are charging 5 Chinese persons
In absentia.
in absentia with some sort of cybercrime over there, I think, stealing secrets from US companies. So maybe it's just I don't know, is it a bit of toing and froing?
I think so.
Didn't I hear the PM yesterday when this business came out about the NIWA supercomputer? Didn't he say that, yes, it was traced back to Chinese authorities, but just because the ISP address is in China, as Chinese, doesn't mean to say it came from actually China, mainland China. Yeah. So, you know, you've got to qualify these things here.
And of course, so few people really understand how these technical things work. There's you know, out of 1,000 people on the street, there'd be very few people who really understand how you can do something from another ISP address when you're not there and whatnot. Really, it is the domain. Excuse the pun. It is the domain of a few.
Yeah.
to understand this and to know it.
See what he did there.
Yeah. Well, espionage has been going on for years.
Yeah, well, espionage has been going on for as long
Forever.
as we've been
Yeah. You look at I'm a plain geek. You look at the Russian bombers in the 50s that were modelled on the American bombers, and they're so similar. Concordsky. There's another prime. This is a perfect example. So what's new? We're just doing it quicker.
And back to what you were saying about Google in Europe, it said, I quote here. Google says it's still figuring out how to comply with the European Court of Justice's May 13th ruling, which says the company must respond to complaints about private information which turns up in searches. And it seems like that people are going to be able to say what information can be available about them in Europe.
Well, how ridiculous is that? So I'm a convicted criminal and I can demand that my information's taken down.
Well, you would, wouldn't you?
Well,
This is restrictive on
well,
everybody.
I think what they're saying is that you may have been charged with something and it made the headlines, but then when you were let off and there was no evidence, that didn't make the headlines. So the existing headline is what lives
But
with
that's
you
generally
forever.
been available to people to approach those agencies and make a request to have that information
not as
taken
easy
down.
just
And
sitting down in your living room.
yeah, but this is the EU, mate, and they want to. And along with America, would love to be able to control the internet. To prissy European sensibilities, I saw it described as in the Herald this morning. And look, this is typical of the EU. It's unelected officials running the European Union, and they've all come from the Eastern Bloc in the past, and this is the way they do business.
Of course, this was the Court of Justice. This was a court.
The European Court of Justice.
Yes, the European Court of Justice.
Which will be a puppet for the EU Council, and I don't know, they can't be trusted, quite honestly. Don't start me on them.
European Court of Justice, that's what it is, yeah, that's what it definitely is.
Can I just say that this program is not necessarily brought to you with the compliments of the New Zealand Herald?
No, it's not, no, indeed. No. We just have quoted them a couple of times. We promise not to always do so in the future.
I think Hunter makes a fair point, but isn't that the breaks? And who's going to go looking for it, for that information that you were wrongly charged with something back in the 1970s?
It's like a number of things, isn't it? You know, I've always noticed in the past that whilst a headline may appear on the front page of a paper, which is later deemed to be inappropriate and wrong, the apologies for that headline appearing never appear on the same page, and the font is never the same size.
Never.
There's a very good case of that just a week or so ago, and I think TV3 again hit the headlines with this on their Facebook page. Wing falls off plane in mid-flight, something like that.
Oh, that sounds great.
And there's actually a photograph of a little piece of tin sticking out of a wing, which wasn't supposed to be there. But of course, all the responses on Facebook page, you know, this is not the wing falling off, you know, get it right. It's just a part of a flap that came adrift. It's not nearly as serious as the wing falling off.
Sensationalism.
Sensationalism, and it
Totally
was
fair.
incorrect.
Yeah.
The pressure's on though, with every media outlet to outdo the next one, because the competition is coming from all angles. There's no protection for anyone now.
Yep.
Didn't take us long to get back onto that from
No.
the Google search. did it?
We come back to that, and actually we often end up talking about it because it is a serious issue. And because people listen to the media, because they get a lot of their information from the media and really don't do their own research, there's a massive sphere of influence. Public opinion can be swayed greatly.
Well, it has been forever, hasn't
It
it?
has been.
Well, you go back to the Sharks basketball business,
That's right.
blown out of all proportion at the start,
Exactly.
and whoa, shape it back into size,
Topics of interest now. Ross, do you want to be first?
Oh, well, okay,
You
I
might as
will.
well, you're the closest.
Okay, I've got a hot under the collar one.
let's
this
go.
week.
Brace
We're
yourselves,
ready?
boys.
Yeah, you'll be
Got hold of the
shocked.
table.
And I'd like you to all get ready to hiss at the end of this, please. My daughter's 18. She's rowed since she was 14. She's a national champion.
And very good at it.
Very good at it. She's at university now. The unis row against Australia every year in the Trans-Tasman Challenge. She was chosen for the team along with 4 or 5 other Southlanders, actually. So this is her big opportunity to wear the black row suit with the silver fern and represent her country in this Trans-Tasman Challenge. Australia have failed to field a team. They're not coming this year. So
Why?
for all those kids, those big kids now who put their guts into that at 5 o'clock in the wet and cold, they get the chance to represent their country, and a bunch of non-hacking Aussies have taken that away from them. So I say shame on Rowing Australia and shame on those guys for being a bunch of non-hackers. And if they've got green in their row seats, the other colour suits them just right. So I feel very sorry for these guys.
There's no question the commitment those rowers have to make.
It's been desperately
There's
disappointing. So exciting to get that chance
discipline.
and to have it taken away by that sort of inaction. It just, I think, makes the Aussies look stink. It's terrible. No good.
Yep.
Gosh.
That's my brickbat for the week.
Absolutely.
I could go on at length about this, but I won't.
Right, and we totally concur. We totally concur. That shouldn't happen. That should not happen. It's not right. But we understand that it's Australia that did it, and we will remember. We will remember.
So take that, Australia. I won't be forgetting.
That's right. Moving along the line, Hunter.
Well, actually, my topic this week is the 70th anniversary of the Battle of Monte Cassino and the veterans that went over there. And I read a rather moving press release from the Department of Defence about a young medic who was over there looking after these now gentlemen who are probably in their 90s, I would imagine. They would have been very young. And how moved he was about dealing with them and hearing what they had gone through. And I think we've got to realise that that was some of the bitterest fighting and of the Second World War outside of the Eastern Front, or likened very much to the Stalingrad type offences. And just to think, before these guys do shuffle off the mortal coil, as they will do in the coming years, of these huge sacrifices that generation made, and what they did going across the world to fight in what was very much an unneeded campaign to fight their way up through Italy. And that just the determination of the Germans and the hand-to-hand fighting and the respect in the Māori battalion there. It would be nice if people just had a look at Wikipedia and just take the time to sit down and read about the struggle and the endeavour and the endurance of those guys, New Zealanders, Poles, Indians, British
Canadians.
and Americans too, that fought in that tiny little part of the globe to drive the Germans back
Two uncles there.
out of the Gustav line. And it was an epic struggle, hand-to-hand fighting with sharpened entrenching tools as close as you can get. And I know this is very grim. This is but I think that we really must remember these guys. And I see the photos, and I go to each Anzac Day parade, and the numbers. It's just a natural attrition. But let's, while these guys are still here, acknowledge that enormous effort that they went through, and the struggle, and on both sides too, because the Germans fought tenaciously, and not all of them were Nazis. A lot of them were doing exactly what New Zealand soldiers were doing. but that tenacious effort and really what was a campaign that was really a folly of Winston Churchill's and hopelessly commanded by Alexander and Clark, the American. And you know, it was very moving to read anyway what the young man had obviously really not known what had gone on, and to hear firsthand from those survivors.
Amazing.
Yeah, amazing.
Yeah. I've got my dad's campaign medals in the
Right,
frame at home. Italy
yeah.
and Africa Star and some others as well. And it was something that he never spoke of. You know, what did you do in the war, Dad? Oh, I drove trucks.
Yep.
Well, you know, some of these cap badges turn up and you think, well, you didn't tell me you drove trucks for the Long Range Desert Group.
Yeah.
And some of the sacrifices and just the quiet way they did it. And I'm just not so sure as a nation that we'd have it in us to
and
stick up for our freedom now.
And there's a lot of hype about World War One, and as there should be, it's a centennial. But let's look at these guys that are still living and fought, and you know. Anyway,
An old friend of mine who I just met through something. I think I was selling something on the internet. But I met him and became quite friendly with him. Died just recently, and he was there. He said I was there at casino, and he said, you know, he said the thing which struck me, he said that the noise, and the noise of the battle and the aircraft overhead, he said it was just phenomenal.
It'll be day in, day out.
Yeah. But there's something of which we have no appreciation, and the fact they were all young men. They were all our young men. And
who came back and shaped New Zealand.
They did.
And shaped New Zealand the way it is now, the way Muldoon shaped it. You know, it was a result of that anyway. Malcolm,
I've heard it
Sorry.
said that in the current army at the moment, but there's a saying, it's not about you, mate, it's about the blokes that went before.
Yes, how interesting.
right.
My point of interest goes back to the centennial of World War I, and this is going to be a huge event. And as far as I can see, correct me if I'm wrong, but on the channels, TV channels, there's absolutely sweet bugger all about it.
Right.
And probably in other media as well. I'm getting facts and figures through Facebook, the stuff coming through there, photographs and recounts, but I just came across a couple of things on YouTube the other night. There's some very good documentaries out about the First World War. They are current, but where are they on the TV for people to access? At this point, don't know, nothing.
You have to be a subscriber to one of the pay TV.
Well, I don't even know if the pay TV is running it.
No, they're not.
And tell us anyway, because of course we're in 2014.
Yes.
And what was the date of the beginning of the 14-18 war?
2nd of August, I think.
Was it 2nd of August? So that's only really a couple of months away.
Yeah. And it just grew from that flare up in Europe to a world war, didn't it?
Yeah, that's right.
From August to the end of the year, it just engulfed the world, the Western world.
Yeah.
And those troubles in Eastern Europe, they've been going on for hundreds of years, haven't they? It's
Haven't they in the
one
Balkans?
sort of,
Ukraine.
Yeah, the Ukraine.
And I mean, that's what we have to say. Has it really stopped in some respects?
Well,
it
humans
hasn't.
are the same.
Yes.
Our methodologies have changed, but we're still the same.
Yeah.
exactly.
Yeah.
Kim and Kanye got married at the weekend, though, so it's all okay, guys.
Why wasn't that your topic of choice?
Well, have we got a moment?
You've got a moment.
This is how the New York Post reported the
Happy
entire
night to finish
wedding,
on,
and
yeah.
I don't know if you can see there, but it takes up a very small space.
Not even a photo.
And it says, 2 jackasses got married in Italy on Saturday. Sex tape star Kim Kardashian, 33, wed egotist Kanye West, 36, and a wedding opulent enough for blah, blah, blah. They were betrothed at Florence's 16th century castle. Olympic athlete Bruce Jenner walked Kim down the aisle. The Republic still stands. We're a bit confused about the last line.
The
though,
Republic
aren't we?
still stands.
Yeah.
I think that's sort of
I like the
pointing
first
out
line.
the inconsequence of the entire event.
Well, that was their entire coverage.
In other words, who cares?
Yes.
At the end of the day, it just shows how some people and some events, for some reason, are in the news for no reason other than their reaction or something else that they've actually done. So
They're just famous because they're famous.
yeah, that's
Yeah.
right. That's dead right. We
Let's
will
just-
never be in that position.
Well, we're working on it
We
through this
do-
program.
We do our very best. Thank you for watching us. Look out for us again in a couple of weeks' time because we'll be back. We'll
With the
see
New
you
Zealand
later.
Herald.